All right. Well, for time's sake, I do want to get rolling. I know everyone has busy schedules out there in remote learning land. First off, good morning or good afternoon, depending on the part of the country or world that you may be dialing in from. I'll introduce myself in just a moment, but I did want to briefly just kind of cover the agenda for today's call, if I can get everything to cooperate with me. Here we go. So just briefly, we'll do some brief introductions. We have about 4 very brief poll questions that we would like to ask of you guys at the beginning of the call. And then we will get into what you guys are all here for, which is the panel discussions. We have our illustrious panelists that are free to answer some of the questions that we have. But I'll go ahead and briefly introduce myself. My name is Bob Berry. I am the Vice President of Business Development at Trox. For those of you who may not be familiar with Trox, we have gone through a few iterations here recently. We were originally known as Troxell or CDI Technologies. Last year in July, we went through a merger. And for a little while, we were known as Troxell CDI, but we have actually shortened the name down to Trox, which matches our website, which is www.trox.com. I think it saves on printing costs that we only have 4 letters in our name now, so that's a positive. But I'll be hosting today's call, and first off, I hate referring to myself as an expert on anything, but I have been steadily employed in the EdTech industry for the last 22 years, so I guess I'll go along with it for today's purposes. Briefly, for those of you guys who may not be familiar with Trox, we really do consider ourselves to be a trusted advisor to countless districts across the United States and Canada. We've been around for more than 40 years. We partner with educators on everything from audiovisual equipment, computing solutions, STEM, STEAM, and collaborative learning, esports, software and services, even professional development. And we're also right there in the trenches with you guys to help address this somewhat newfound need of remote learning. So I'm extremely excited about today's topic, which obviously is all about remote learning. I think that most of us can agree that the traditional learning environment has changed, and at least for the time being, I think it may revert back to what we're all accustomed to at some point, but that's out for the jury. I think for the foreseeable future, though, we all have to kind of remain nimble and agile and ready to face a lot of the changes that are coming our way. So our objectives for today's call, if you want to learn more about what your peers are doing around remote learning, you are in the right place. Number 2, if you want to learn more about doing a self-assessment for remote learning readiness, you're in the right place. And last but not least, if you need to identify the next steps that will assist you in building a future-proof remote, that's a lot of words, future-proof remote learning plan for your school or district, you are definitely in the right place. So we really do hope that today's call is going to provide you guys with some inspiration that you can use and implement in your own district. It's an unprecedented situation that we're all facing, and I'm guessing it probably causes some anxiety for all of us on this call, whether or not you are a district technology leader, a CIO, CTO, tech director, if you're in curriculum, if you're in instructional technology, if you are a network administrator, if you are a principal or a teacher, I think we're all facing the same thing. So pretty much anyone who is involved in the process of delivering meaningful instruction to students, we're all in the same boat. So just a couple of really quick housekeeping items before we get started. We will be doing a Q&A segment at the very end of the call. So we'd appreciate it if you guys could use the Q&A box, which hopefully you guys can find fairly easily to type in any questions that you have. Feel free to put in any questions as we go through the presentation, and we will answer as many questions as we possibly can. So before I turn things over, I'm going to switch to the next slide. We've got some poll questions, and hopefully I can do this right. But I wanted just to take a few minutes, and not a few minutes, but actually 30 or 45 seconds, and I'm going to launch the polling here. So if you guys don't mind, just hopefully everyone can see the polling. If I can get maybe a head nod from my fellow panelists, yes? So if you wouldn't mind just taking a few moments, 30 or 45 seconds to answer these questions and see if we're all in agreement, that would be very helpful. If I had Jeopardy music, I would be playing it right now. We have 2 people out of 168, 5 out, okay, we're getting there. Once I get the majority, I will end the polling and we'll see what we got. All right, looks like we got about at least half of the folks that have weighed in. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna give it another 15 seconds here. We'll get over 100 and then I'll stop the polling. How about that? All right. So I think I will be able to actually share the results. So you guys should be able to see the results right here on the screen. So the first question was, what was your biggest challenge with remote learning? It looks like the one that won out at 45% is students' attendance and engagement. I can definitely vouch for that. What is your district's most likely scenario for the next academic school year? Blended learning definitely was 86% of the respondents, so that's good to see. What is your favorite part of remote learning? Looks like we had two top answers. I get to use technology creatively and instructional flexibility won out at 38% each. And the last question is, name one tool you wish teachers already had in the spring that they didn't have access to. And 60% said training on current hardware and software. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing the polling here real quick and hopefully I can X out of this. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Wayne Lawson. Wayne is Trox's foremost expert on educational technology. He spent many, many years in the K-12 community working for one of the largest school districts in the country. So Wayne, would you take a brief moment and introduce yourself and then introduce our panelists?
Absolutely, Bob. So first of all, thank you for everyone who's joining us today. It's a pleasure to be here. Just really briefly, my background involves 18 years formerly as an educator, but my true passion is educational technology and bridging that passion so that it makes the most impact for our students. I do come from Clark County School District, which is the 5th largest district in the country, and we have a lot to work on. So this really is an opportunity, in my opinion, to kind of relook at how we approach education. So it's my pleasure and distinct honor to introduce our panelists today. Our expert panelists today share over 80 years of educational experience running the gambit from exceptional in-class teaching to high-level administrative and school board leadership positions. Melanie Tiemont has received such accolades as Teacher of the Year from our former president, and Ron Cohn is a highly accomplished executive director of informational technology. Finally, Bob Mars serves on numerous educational boards, as well as involvement in legislative processes on a national level supporting education. So please welcome the proud principal of Garrett Junior High School, Melanie Tiemont, Robert Mars, the principal of Shadow Ridge High School, both in Nevada, and Ron Cohn, who is the executive director of informational technology based out of Kennewick School District in Washington State.
Great, thank you,
Bob,
Wayne.
we'll turn it over to you to start the questions.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hopefully we can see everyone's beautiful face here a little bit better. So first question I want to start off with is we are wrapping up an end of the school year like no other, at least no other I can recall in my vast 22 years in this industry. But I want to know, what are your key takeaways and how did you prioritize your immediate needs? Do you mind, Bob, if we start with you?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Wayne and Bob. One of the things that we found out is that we really need to ensure that we set clear expectations from the very beginning, right? When everything started, I think Clark County was much like many other counties throughout the country, or many districts throughout the country, and that we were kind of building the plane as we were going. And sometimes bits and pieces might fall off the plane and we build it again. And we really need to ensure that when we're starting the year next year, we've got that plane built. Whether it's 90, 95% built, we cannot start the year thinking about what we're going to be doing. We should be planning and putting things in place now from an administrative standpoint, and then sharing that not only with our teachers, but with our parents and with our students, because they need to know what the expectations are prior to the year even beginning. One of the things that we really need to ensure is that everybody is getting clear professional development. We found that to be really appropriate, not only from the academic standpoint, but also PD on any technology that they're going to be using. Because if you look at any research that's out there, we really know that there is specific and a direct correlation to quality professional development and pertaining to teacher and administrator retention. And we also know that if you have higher teacher and administrator retention, that's a direct result in positive student achievement. So we want to ensure that we really do have that PD that's available, not just from an academic standpoint, but from a, how do we actually use the stuff that we're going to be providing to the students and to the teachers. So I would say that would be some of the key takeaways that we had right from the very beginning.
Yeah, it sounds like from the poll question that we launched earlier, I think the group overwhelmingly agrees with you on professional development. So same question for you, Ron.
All right. So one of the first things that we really encountered that we needed to do, we have a fairly high poverty population, and we needed to jump in and figure out how to feed students. And so that was our first operation. And then we moved on to some things we're in the middle of our one-to-one process. So we were about halfway through being fully one-to-one. So we started out just accelerating that plan. So the first thing we did was we already had our 6th through 9th grade teachers all trained, and the kids doing take-homes with their Chromebooks. And so we just let them go and continue what they were doing. But we took a week and we pulled in our other teachers that were going to suddenly need to be doing remote learning and how to use Chromebooks with students, and did some PD training with them for the week. Got them up to speed on some minimal things, but got them some training so that they could get going, and really accelerated our PD development that we were doing. Then as we moved through, we started contacting all of our families to start asking them, do you need a device? Do you have internet at home? Making sure that they could get access. We did, like we ordered some Wi-Fi's from Verizon. We did have some Chromebooks, so we went and pulled carts out of buildings and handed those out to families, along with Wi-Fi's if they couldn't afford the internet access connections. Those were our big things to get us started in that process and get that thing going so we could do kind of a blended learning right now.
Great, thank you, Ron. Wayne, I think you may have the next question.
Yeah, so just again, I want to compliment Melanie T. So not only the accolades of Teacher of the Year, but I've worked side by side with her. She's definitely an innovative thought leader. And so, Melanie, I want to directly address this question to you, if you could answer it for us. From the days when you were in the classroom, from the teacher's perspective, what do you think are essential needs, support for teachers to successfully meet needs of students going forward?
Well, thank you for asking, because I think this is from a teacher's perspective and an administrator's perspective, to be honest with you, because when we begin in the fall, we will be returning to students who have really suffered a lot of emotional trauma at different levels, depending on their experience through this very trying time. And we have to remember, at least in Clark County, they were sent home on a Friday and not to return. And as middle school students, as many students are, they really rely on their social circle. And without having that closure, without having that time with their friends, we've seen a lot of social, emotional trauma, basically, with students that we will be returning to. So as we plan on reopening those schools in August or the fall, or whenever we do reopen them, in whatever circumstances that we do reopen, our top consideration needs to be about their social, emotional well-being. And honestly, not just the students, but the parents, the school community, and especially the staff. You're asking them to find these innovative ways to engage students and to keep students with them and trusting them. So they really need to know you have their backs and that we have to support each other. There will be students who do not return due to health concerns, students who can only come every other day or even less if it's a larger school system, perhaps those who have lost any connection to the education system at this time and don't really know how to return. So we need to find our ways to reach out to them. And it may be through technology. It may be some kind of other personal connection. Honestly, just picking up the phone makes the biggest personal connection I can think of, to let students know that you're thinking about them, to let parents know that as well. I think that as we make decisions based on a constantly moving target, our core values and vision for next year must start with establishing a long-term relationship with students, their families, the school community, and I include all these different groups of stakeholders because sometimes it actually takes reaching out to the community to help you support school, to students and families. And you know, coming from leading a school in a small town, that becomes very crucial in our community. It means sometimes that you might have to make creative connections in a way that we've never had to before with parents to better bring their students back into the loop and back into the fold of our family to be able to, and that means you're going to have to create a sense of community. You're going to have to think about those cultural connections and how that looks, making deposits with families so that when the circumstances change suddenly, they know they can trust you. They know that, hey, I know I can email Mrs. Timon and ask what's going on and see if there's another way to do this, or if there's a way that she can reach out to my child because they trust you. They know that you will. And I think that's going to be really important as we bring them along as part of our journey. Again, regardless of what phase we're in, regardless of what the learning environment looks like at the time. During remote learning, parents were our partners in teaching and learning. So we have to remember that. We have to consider them as we plan. We need to include parents. We need to include stakeholders in that plan. And that right there will build that sense of community and trust between the stakeholders. I know at our school we're bringing in a group called Breaking Down the Walls, and that is about creating cultural connections and learning each other's story and being able to train the staff in how to make those important, crucial connections right now with students and their families. And so we have to honor each other's stories and remember that social emotional well-being has got to be our top priority if we really want effective learning to take place.
Very well said. Thank you, Melanie. I'm going to move on to the next question. So most districts have a contingency plan in place preparing for a blended or hybrid learning model, or even if they go to a fully traditional model, prepared to pivot toward remote learning again if it becomes necessary. So how are you preparing for this next year differently than a traditional school year? Melanie, can I pick on you again?
So yes, absolutely. And you have to think, I think Bob mentioned it, and how important that professional development is in these circumstances, because if teachers don't feel comfortable, then they're right where the students are. They're apprehensive for getting on that device of whatever kind, or using that platform, whether it be Google Classroom or Canvas. So we have to make sure they're comfortable, because they're going to teach the kids. They're going to teach the parents who are already frustrated maybe with technology and how it's being used. Throughout these past few months, I also have to say, because even today, administrators and districts, we've been inundated with companies and products and resources of here's the best way to remote learn, and here's the best platform to use. And now the newest wave of products are those to help us social distance kids within the classroom. So you're getting the plastic panels or the plexiglass panels, and how to set up a room, and it's all great, but we have to be crucial that we don't get caught up. It's very crucial we don't get caught up in that rat race of companies competing for our dollars and vendors and their products. We have to focus on our vision and our core values. And in the past few weeks, honestly, the conversations with administrators throughout this district have me focusing on professional development efforts for two crucial topics. That's social emotional learning and well-being, and getting back to the basics of this, just teaching the standards. The teachers are focused on filling the gaps right now. They're very focused on, we need to fill those gaps, but we still need to move on and teach new standards. So if, as an administrator right now, that professional development that I'm going to focus on will be centered around those two topics. And I'm streamlined, that administrators talk about just taking everything off the plate, streamlining that professional development to what the teachers need, and making sure that it's a laser focus on professional development with teachers leading the conversation. So that is what professional development needs to look like if we really expect that effective learning to take place.
Great, thanks, Melanie. Wayne, did you have some input on the subject?
Yeah, and so I'm kind of bridging the gap between, obviously foundationally, professional development is crucial, but I took some notes, and it's interesting, as I'm working with hundreds of administrators in schools, at least in Clark County in Nevada, something that is really important is not all tech is created equally. So when it comes to a couple of crucial questions that we have to ask ourselves, and I'm going to present some solutions too here in just a second. But first of all, what are you trying to accomplish? So first thing is professional development whenever you decide what tech it is. And then second of all is that technology that you're implementing, is it engaging? Is it going to impact students positively? So really a couple of things that we're putting in play right now that have seemed to be highly effective is kind of a bridge between how do you engage students over a device? So we have a couple suggestions that we've been working with, starting with professional development, but then implementing some type of interactive device in combination with software. So I'll give you one example. Google Jamboard is just a phenomenal tool. If anybody's out there, it is amazing. What you can do is you can start, for example, a live meet, which is the Google Meet or a Zoom, and you can annotate and actually ask questions in real time with your students via Google Jamboard. Now, the best part of it is it's web-based. So when you're using it on that interactive tablet, whatever it might be, you can actually work out the problems and your students can ask questions in real time. So something like this is beneficial for two crucial reasons. Number one, we don't know what we're coming back to. There's a lot of different scenarios out there, but this specific AV solution will apply to both outside of school and brick and mortar. So the teacher can use it, engage their students from inside the school when they come back, but they also can cast from home. So that's just one of our many solutions that we're offering. Obviously, web cameras for connecting and recording lessons are really important. But I just want to encourage everyone that lean on your Trox reps. A lot of them are complete experts when it comes to this area. And I don't want to ignore the fact that professional development is crucial, but come back to that point that I'm trying to make is not all solutions when it comes to technology are equal. So make sure that you lean on your reps for that, and we're all here to help.
Thanks, Wayne. Mr. Cohn, your thoughts?
All right. So one of the things we're going to go through and kind of finish our one-to-one implementation as we go into this. And one of the things that we were trying to deal with was the damage rate. So we had our pilots going on and we learned that we had kind of about a 5% damage rate. But we were a little concerned as we went into deploying to middle school students because our pilots had really been with high school students. And so one of the things that we decided we needed was a backup to our own insurance policy, I guess, of damage on the devices. So what we did was we worked with Troxell to purchase the Stay Mobile protection with a case. And so it cost us more than just the case itself, but not that much more. And it added 3 years of accidental damage protection on our devices. So I feel a lot better handing out devices knowing that I've got some coverage there. That doesn't cover the devices that are stolen, but it, that's in a 20,000 student district, we've had maybe 10 of those this year that we've had stolen. It's really more the accidental damage. Student drops the device and breaks it. And so that's really being able to put that stop loss, I guess, in place for myself and be able to know that I've got a budget that I can work with. And then we charge the kids a fee, it's reduced if they're free and reduced and stuff. But we use those fees to try to recover the cost of the Stay Mobile protection. It's been really, really helpful for us to make sure we're in a good financial position doing this.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think middle schoolers are probably the roughest on equipment in general, if I'm not mistaken. And just kind of a quick follow-up for you, Ron. were you guys just buying a protection plan for all the new devices that you were deploying, or were you actually going back to older devices and putting protection
No,
plans?
we actually put the protection plan on all of our older devices. We put it on every device, every Chromebook that we owned, and then now we just put it on all the new ones as we buy them.
Fantastic. I think that's something that's commonly overlooked. A lot of districts don't know that for the existing inventory that they have, you can still add a plan to those. So thanks, Ron.
Yeah.
Bob, your thoughts?
Sure. I know Melanie and Ron touched on the importance of the ensuring kids are fed and that the social and emotional component is being met. And we can't stress that enough as people who are in the building and working with the kids and ensuring that our teachers' needs are met. But I'm going to assume that everybody's doing that and that we're at that point. I think it's important for us to not have a one-size-fits-all model. And when you're looking at purchasing technology or other devices, really what is going to work for that particular building, whether it's a grade level or if there's multiple high schools in the district, what's going to work for one high school may or may not necessarily work for the next school. So it's really important to keep that in mind and ensure that you have some flexibility in whatever you're doing. So for example, I'm dealing with an RFP right now that was put out probably 6 to 9 months ago. It was pre-COVID. And the reality is that schools are getting refreshed. We're probably going to have 30 to 40 schools getting a computer refresh. And none of the RFPs include anything for remote learning with having cameras and microphones on the actual devices. Well, people are really frustrated with that because that's what they need right now. Even if we are doing some type of blended learning, chances are teachers will still be in the building and doing something remotely from their classroom as well, not always just being at home like they were previously. Yet the devices that we're currently getting don't have that, and there's not anything in the bid currently for that. We're working on getting that changed. So just ensure that you are flexible and able to make those changes. And just because we've always done something a certain way, we need to be able to get the schools, the devices, the technology, what they really need in order to ensure that the students and the teachers are going to be engaged in their learning, in the lesson, because we can't just do a sit and get. We've got to have things that are available. And Wayne mentioned the Google Jamboard. If people aren't familiar with that, I would totally encourage you to take a look at that. It's a free software that's embedded into Google. I know many districts use Google Suite in their education scenarios. So I would utilize that. It's agnostic. It doesn't matter what device you're using with it, as long as it's a touch device. And it's really amazing way for the teachers to be able to get that engagement with the students immediately. So I would just say, make sure you're future-proofing whatever you're doing. Thinking forward 3-5 years, what is it going to be like? What are we going to be needing? And then getting the technology that's going to meet the needs. And again, just to reiterate that it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all model, whether you have a small district with a few schools or you have Clark County is the 5th largest district with over 300 schools. It can't be a one-size-fits-all model. I know it makes it nice. When I was in central office, it made it nice for me to be able to think that way and do that. But it's just not a practical thing from the actual building standpoint. You need to have some flexibility in the choices that you're giving people.
Thank you, sir. Hey, Wayne, before you ask the next question, I just want to remind everyone on the call, if you guys do have questions, just go ahead and put them in the Q&A box, because we are going to stick around for as long as you guys like and answer any questions that you might have. So if you want us to expand on any topic, or if we're not covering something that you think we should, by all means, just include that in the Q&A box. Sorry, Wayne.
Well, that's great, Bob. And I know Bob is going to touch more on this, but we do have a blueprint that's following up after this call on some of those different solutions that Robert Mars is talking about. So that is coming. Okay, finally, let's put some hope into this. So my final question is, and I'm going to address this to Bob Mars first, but what makes you hopeful about where we go from here past these current challenges? Do you see this as an opportunity to reshape how we approach education?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think whether you're a central office administrator, whether you're a building administrator, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a student, whether you're teaching AP calculus or you're teaching physical education or you're teaching art ceramics, it doesn't matter. We have learned so much over the past 8 weeks of school that we can utilize in all of our classroom moving forward. At some point, we're hopeful that we'll be back in a brick and mortar, but we also recognize that, you know what, some of our teachers really thrive in an online environment, and some of our students really thrive in an online environment as well. And so we need to be able to be accommodating to that regardless of where we are with COVID or not COVID, and offer solutions for that. You know, as we're purchasing, are we going to get a new computer lab with fixed computers in there? Or are we going to outfit it with laptops that are going to suit the needs of our students that we can then utilize if we need to go from a building to an online? We can turn that very, very quickly around. So I'm very, very hopeful for the future. I'm excited with what our teachers are doing. I'm excited with the students. We've had sometimes more students that have been engaged in the distance learning. Maybe they weren't doing really well in the brick and mortar traditional school for whatever reason. And now all of a sudden, the kids who were struggling academically, they're thriving in this online environment because it really works for them. So when we get back to 6 months from now, 9 months from now, whatever it's going to be, we need to keep that in mind. And maybe the traditional structure of what we've had, you need to come to school from this time to this time, be here, go from one period to the next period. We are all going to be rethinking of what it's really going to look like. And the technology that's available to us now wasn't available to us 5 years ago, right? And we think about if this would have occurred 5 years ago or 10 years ago, the tragic situation we would have been in. I'm really hopeful that 5 years from now, there's things that aren't even developed yet that our kids are going to be using, our teachers are going to be using. So I'm really, really optimistic with the future of education, the future of technology, and what we're going to be able to do to ensure that our students remain engaged in the learning and that they are academically successful and that they have a strong social emotional component as well, because there's a lot of things we can do socially, emotionally with our technology. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. And Ron, if you want to answer the same question, what do you see as an opportunity to reshape education in this current time?
So for me, the one thing that really gave me hope coming into this or through this was that we got all kinds of people and groups together to solve problems. And one of the problems that we discovered was, for us, we had allowed the wild, wild west to run in Kennewick, where you could use any LMS or free service or communication tool you wanted to use. And we found quickly that that was upsetting to parents and somewhat to students. And so it's really brought us together to choose that we're going to go through a very quick process and choose a single LMS solution to communicate with our parents. And I noticed somebody posted a question in there about an LMS and using things. One of our criteria quickly was that we needed it to be able to run the vendor software that we've already chosen for our curriculum in the LMS. And we quickly discovered that we were having problems with that kind of thing, where single sign-on wouldn't flow through from Google Classroom into our application. So we were having to send kids out, go to the single sign-on website portal and click here, and then go back and click the link the teacher gave you, and then it'll take you right into that piece of the application that you're supposed to be working with. And so it was just it's a big thing for our community, and that's the big takeaway, was get to a single platform where you can communicate with your parents and students and provide them services.
Yeah, and Ron, just to touch on that point, we've been hearing a lot of that. Standardization is not always the enemy when it comes to communications, simplifying the process, choosing an LMS, especially when it comes to community and parents. A lot of districts now are figuring that out. So I'm glad you brought up that point, because you're not the only district that has been dealing with the Wild West. We've heard that from a lot of districts. So thank you for bringing that up. And then finally, Melanie, same question. Opportunity to reshape education in this current climate.
Absolutely. And I wholeheartedly agree with both Bob and Ron on those same avenues for the way education will look. I agree that we're going to analyze what we're doing and how we're doing it and how it could look to be even more effective for students and honestly for parents as well. As we even see these charter schools and different types of learning environments open up, you're already seeing that the public, in the sense, are craving different ways to learn and different avenues. But I think one of the biggest things is, at least for me, because I like working with people. And so it's about building those relationships with the people that you can ask those questions to, because that's not my area of expertise. So over these last few years, I've been able to build that relationship with Trox, and with my friend Wayne Lawson being there, that really was a great avenue for me to ask questions. Wayne is a leader with Google products, providing quality professional development for educators across the country. I like to focus our dollars and our professional development on just a few successful products and resources, so that we can actually go deeper into learning and into teaching. We like to use Google Classroom and G Suite applications and other tools and resources that Wayne has obviously exposed me to. And so teachers are able to engage students in productive learning, and it really leads to more high leverage outcomes. And that's what we want in the end. That is what our focus is. We were fortunate enough to, and I know Bob is doing the same, purchase several interactive flat panels through Trox, and we're on the next phase of that, of making sure all of our teachers have one. Our next opportunity that we are able to purchasing will be as a result of this remote learning experience, and that is some type of touch screen device for people to use Jamboard, to be able to use that in the classroom and out of the classroom at home if they need to, because that now we're seeing that ability to be able to move about the room versus also being at home. Take that home. You can't take the interactive flat panel home. So this is kind of a way of being able to bridge that gap. So I think it's about building relationships with the people like Trox and other vendors and companies that we can really learn from. And this summer, as people were struggling, Trox jumped right on board with, hours and hours of professional development, all free to teachers, all free to educators, administrators, whoever wanted to learn. We're able to get on and just learn how to use Jamboard, how to take attendance through Google Classroom and through all of these different types of applications that teachers were using remotely, so that they could actually reach out to those who weren't joining, and those who were joining, they could know who was there. There was just a lot of hands-on professional development. I think that we need to remember that education is, again, it's always moving and changing, and this target is changing so rapidly that we have to move with it. We can't teach remotely like we taught in a classroom. And so we have to move forward with what the kids need and what the teachers need. And that is about building relationships with those who can teach us and give us those tools.
I agree with everything you said, except for all those positive things about Wayne. I have to work with the guy.
Yeah, I was actually shocked.
Giving him such a big head, but that's great. No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go back. This kind of concludes the Q&A part of our discussion. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone's seeing my screen again. Yes? Okay, good. So the next slide I just wanted to hit on real quick, if I can get this thing to move, is just key takeaways. I'm actually going to be really short because I think we're kind of going over our allotted time, but I just wanted to call out a few of the key takeaways for me from a selfish perspective. I was busily taking notes as our panelists were answering these questions. I heard a lot about setting expectations for your district. I heard a lot about specific equipment needs like hotspots and mobile devices and webcams and protective cases and protection plans, especially when these devices are going home with students, because obviously there's a massive liability when you're giving these to a 12-year-old. But another topic I obviously heard a lot was professional development. That's a key takeaway for me. Getting the proper training to schools so that remote instruction is impactful to everyone is really big. Keeping students engaged. I think, Melanie, you talked a lot about that. All of you guys did. I have a 16-year-old daughter who's in high school, and I've noticed in her remote learning environment, which is our guest room that we've set up as an office, it's really difficult to keep her on task so many times because of all the distractions at home. So keeping lesson plans interactive and collaborative, I think, is super important. So I think that needs to be at the forefront for all these schools. So I'm going to switch over to our question and answer. I think we started to get a lot of questions in here. Wayne, did you want to monitor this a bit for us?
Yeah, we have quite a few, Bob. And what I'll do is I'll open up to anybody who wants to answer them. I think I can take this first one, but question come from Manuel. He's asking. He said, first of all, hello. How do you implement a one-to-one scenario at a school? And Manuel, in my past experience, and this was actually part of my expertise when I was working in Clark County. First of all, you have to define, obviously, what device that you want to choose. So it all depends on, what ecosystem you're using. For example, if you're using Microsoft, obviously you're going to choose a different device. If you're using Google, most likely I would prefer Chromebooks. But there's a lot of things to think about. And this is a deep question, because it's more than just the device. We've talked a lot about the professional development component, which is critical. That's what's going to make the most impact, so that teachers are trained on devices. But something that oftentimes people miss is the management side of the devices. And there are a lot of really good solutions, from everything from Hapara, Lightspeed, GoGuardian are a couple just off the top of my head. But oftentimes district they'll overlook that crucial piece of monitoring and keeping kids on task. Because I think something that Bob just mentioned, and in my own kids, which I personally have 3, especially in today's environment, technology can not only be distracting, but kids have grown up with that technology, and they're constantly wanting to be, let's say, entertained, so to speak. So applying a software that keeps them on task is absolutely crucial. But things like, and I'll just dive a little bit deeper into GoGuardian when it comes to one-to-one implementation. GoGuardian is so much more. For example, it has everything from threat assessment, which if a kid is searching up keywords or suicidal thoughts, it'll actually flag counselors if you set it up. So there's so many benefits to something like GoGuardian. But really, when it comes to one-to-one implementation, professional development, choose your ecosystem, pick a device based on that. And then, in my opinion, probably one of the most important things is make sure you tie some type of software to that device. All right, so moving on to the second question. What is the availability of Chromebooks with everyone needing to go one-to-one student to computer ratio? Bob, Barry, you probably could take that one.
So the availability of Chromebooks, it is definitely a moving target. We actually, not to put a commercial up for us, but we stock a lot of product in our facility. So we have a warehouse that is actually, I wouldn't say overflowing with devices, but we are in a very good stock position. I don't know how long it's going to last. We deal with customers every day who are inquiring about a potential deployment of devices. Sometimes, we've deployed into one district just this year over 50,000 devices, another district 40,000, another district 35,000. We've got a lot of opportunities that are out there with districts around the country. So it's very hard to say. It's a moving target. I think as the year goes on, we're going to see, demand will rise and supply will obviously decrease. So it's going to be tough. I couldn't answer that, but again, that's a perfect question to connect with me. I've got my contact information on the last slide, and I would love to talk with anyone who's considering doing a deployment. The whole fiscal year, the end of the fiscal year is kind of, thrown on its ear this year. And so I think it's going to be difficult to predict, but we can do our best. We work very closely with all of the device manufacturers. I'll do them alphabetically: Acer, Asus, Dell, HP, Lenovo, Samsung, all of them that actually build a Chromebook or a Windows device. And so hard to answer, but it's going to be tougher, I think, as the year goes on. The second half of this year, I think it's going to be really tough. But we're in a great position as well. So I don't know if I did a very good job of answering that.
No, that's great. And so Marquez has quite a few questions. I don't know, to try to keep this as democratic as possible, what we'll probably do is, Marquez, by all means, we will answer all these questions for you. We will make sure to take care of you. He's got some great questions on here, and we can definitely answer all these. One of his other ones was, how do you suggest handling tech support for families? And that's definitely a deeper dive, and then discuss solutions for conducting standardized testing remotely. We also have some solutions for that, but I want to try to keep this democratic and answer as many questions from as many different people as possible. So Manuel asked the question, can you expand on the protection plan for Chromebooks and price costs to students? Bob, do you want to expand on that for the protection plan?
Sure. Bob Berry, I'm assuming you're asking? Yeah, so
yes,
there's a number of different plans, everywhere from like 1, 2, 3, and 4 year plans. Ron was mentioning in his district, and maybe I'll pass this on to him. But again, he had I believe they're Dell devices that he had that were maybe 2 years old. We were actually able to add a protection plan onto a lot of those existing ones. But there's everything that covers accidental damage and protection. With some plans, you actually get a case that's included as part of your plan. I would probably average it of saying roughly it's about $20 per year for, and I think I heard Bob, you say, or someone said that there's a technology fee that you may put out there for students or for the parents to pay. So that technology fee a lot of times can cover an accidental damage and protection plan. And some of these will also have an extension of the OEM warranty. With most of the OEMs that are out there, you get a 1-year parts and labor warranty. So these protection plans are great. It's an insurance policy. It actually creates kind of a predictable budget for a district, because you don't have to worry about maintaining a parts closet. You don't have to worry about bringing the parts in. There's always the issue of tariffs and bringing these parts in from overseas. So this does really help out. And there's a number of facilities, they can usually on average get devices returned to you within about 7 to 10 days. But they're very affordable plans that are out there now. There's certain plans that are coming from the manufacturers and other ones that are third party. So again, connect with us offline or at any point, and we'd be happy to cover those in more detail for you.
All right. And so, Bob, I'm getting the hook right now on the stage. It looks like we'll answer all of these questions for everyone. There's some phenomenal questions on here. But we could probably carry this on for several hours if we answer all of them. So we'll make sure to answer all of these questions in detail. And Bob, if you want to go ahead, I'll turn it over to you to close us out and take us home.
First off, thank you to all of our attendees. A very special thank you to our panelists, to Robert and Melanie and Ron. Really appreciate you guys being on the call today. It was very helpful. As far as next steps go, just we will be providing you guys with the webinar recording so you can share this with your colleagues and your peers. Beyond that, so we'll have that webinar recording to you guys tomorrow via email. We'll also provide you with it's kind of a self-assessment guide for you to use in your district. It's a back-to-school scenario. So whether or not you're in that traditional learning environment or the hybrid or blended learning environment or a full-on remote learning environment, it'll give you different scenarios and a checklist and things that you guys should be considering. Everything from the services to the hardware needs and things like that. And last but not least, we're gonna have, in probably about a week's time, we will email everyone that joined the call with a remote learning guide. A remote learning guide, we've been calling it internally kind of an AV lookbook, but it has a lot of really, really cool EdTech solutions that you guys might be able to implement into your district. Think of it kind of like a blueprint for any scenario that you guys might encounter. So the last slide, and we're done, I promise you guys, but ways to stay connected. This is my contact information. So feel free to jot that down. Of course, it's going to be on the recorded webinar. We have a toll-free number there that you can call, and it'll connect you with your nearest account executive. And last but not least, our website, Trox.com. There's a lot of really great information and resources there that you guys can look at, case studies and things like that. Wayne, any other closing thoughts? I can see you were chomping at the bit.
Yeah. I just had one more question, Bob, that's coming to us, asking if we'll answer these questions on the Q&A. And what we're planning on doing is following up on email. We'll go ahead and copy and paste these questions and answer them for you. So look for that email with those questions answered. And more importantly, I just want to thank everyone, especially the panelists today. Some of them I consider personal friends, and I'm honored and blessed to work with them on a daily basis and provide solutions. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Real quick, if I could, because I'm reading some of the questions, and some are specific to like a building level too. So I can't speak for Melanie or Ron, but if you want to share my email information out, I'd be happy to speak with any of the guests here and answer the questions for them as well, because some are certainly building specific in terms of what we did with pass-fail grades and how things were handled. So I have no problem with that.
Absolutely. So we'll share all the questions and answers, and then we'll give, with your approval, your contact information should anyone want to reach out. That's a yes from Melanie. Great. Yes. And so thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. Stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys on a future call.
Thank you, everyone.